We actually have a lot of use from the strategic side.
Okay.
So more of those developing insights.
Welcome to TBR Talks, decoding strategies and ecosystems of the globe's top tech firms, where we talk business model disruption in the broad technology ecosystem, from management consultancies to systems integrators, hyperscalers to independent software vendors, telecom operators to network and infrastructure vendors, and chip manufacturers to value-added resellers. We'll be answering some of the key intelligence questions we've heard from executives and business unit leaders among the leading professional IT services and telecom vendors. I'm Patrick Heffernan, Principal Analyst, and today we'll be talking about Ericsson's AI strategy and new AI assistant with Elizabeth Roberts, Global Head of Information Management at Ericsson. When the Ericsson team released the tool to the full organization, the name was established as Ask BIC to keep the team branding consistent, but in this conversation it was referred to as Erica. Welcome to Season 4 of TBR Talks, and please enjoy my chat with Elizabeth. Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming on this podcast. I really appreciate it. We have known each other for over a decade now in our respective jobs at Ericsson for you and TBR for me. For everyone listening, could you just maybe sort of walk through what is your title? What is your actual role at Ericsson? I just know you as Elizabeth from Ericsson, but I'm sure others at Ericsson actually know you by a title. So what is it?
So my external title is Global Head of Information Management, which is a nice, fancy, fluffy title. Internally, I'm known as the head of BIC, Business Intelligence Center, and that actually defines my role better, which is more of the responsibility of taking care of all of the external research and getting it into one portal where all the users internally can access it.
And about how many users a month, say, access BIC?
We have about 3,000.
Okay.
That are fairly consistent monthly users. We have about 300 that use it almost daily. So not a bad amount for, a company of 100,000 people.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I mean, responding to being responsible to 3,000 users a month, that's not a small task. I imagine you get a lot of compliments and complaints, right?
A lot of complaints, more than compliments, but that's okay. We learn from a lot of the complaints, so it makes things better.
Excellent. I wanted to ask you, just sort of, because you've been there a while at Ericsson and your job maybe has evolved a bit and changed a bit, but really talk about some of the changes in the last couple of years, either from a technology perspective or from a responsibilities within Ericsson perspective. And technology has changed so much in the last couple of years. I'm curious if there are things that, when you look back and you think about, okay, my job 5 years ago was not this because of a piece of technology, or my job 5 years ago was not this because of new responsibilities. I'm wondering which has changed more for you.
I'd say responsibilities, but the responsibilities came about as a result of technology. Google is an amazing thing. When we talk about a search engine, it really honestly and truly has changed how research is done. And so the technology behind how people search for information has changed, which means how I go about answering questions has changed. And I don't actually have to answer nearly as many questions as I used to 5 years ago. That technology is available there to make it easier for end users. So I spend a lot more of my time actually doing more things contract-wise, things along the lines of dealing with compliance and legal and things like that to make sure that we have rights to use the information. And just ways of making information easier to find for people, because while it's easier to search, natural language search isn't as great as we'd all like it to be. I wish it could all be just as easy as saying, where can I find X? And the answer would come right back to me, but it's still not there yet. We're getting closer.
And how much is the culture within Ericsson changed? And I know that's a really loaded question, but in the time that we've known each other, the workplace has definitely changed. I mean,
Yep.
From a technology perspective, as you mentioned, that sort of search has been increasingly better and better refined. We had AI has become such a huge part of our daily lives. But also we went through a pandemic, we went through a whole work from home surge, and now it's changed, and now we're heading back in the other direction. And I'm wondering, as a technology company, how much has not just the technology, but also the culture within Ericsson changed?
The culture within Ericsson has changed quite a bit. I think the pandemic actually, like most other companies, forced us to become faster at certain things. And in fact, my laptop became 5G enabled last week.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I don't have
All
to
right.
I don't have to connect to Wi-Fi anymore. I can be anywhere, which is an amazing thing. So in that aspect, I think it's going to continue to change. I think the biggest cultural change, honestly, within Ericsson is related to compliance. I think we're a lot more conscious now of what can and can't be done in certain things. And some of that's come about because of forced circumstances, and some of it's come about just because of how fast technology has changed. We used to have the huge standards that said, well, this is how things are done, and you had to go through them. And now you don't have time to spend 8, 10, 9, 12 months writing a standard to get to how something should be done in technology. You just kind of say, okay, well, how do we do this, and how do we get it done fast for the customer? So
Right. Right. Yeah, that is, I mean, and for especially for an established, a well-established technology company, making that kind of cultural change to speed up, to accelerate, to make changes
yes,
faster, that can be really hard. And
it,
and
it
your
can.
role as, sort of in some ways the chief information officer, you could say, how you feel like you're part of helping with that acceleration?
I think so, because I find myself more and more often trying to find answers to questions that there's no research for. We're starting to, before it would be, okay, how do we find this answer? And it was fairly easy to find established information because technology wasn't changing as quickly. And now we have people asking questions where there is no research created. There is nothing that's there. It's going to have to be created. And so it's a matter of, well, where do we go to try and start to put this together?
And is that where you're relying on the trusted resources you've had and you're sort of cobbling together a few different trusted views, or how are you that's crazy to me that you're getting questions that have no answers to them and you're tasked with finding them out. So what are you doing exactly? Where are you going?
We just keep asking the question over and over again in different ways, and talking to analysts and talking to the firms we work with and talking to people like you, Patrick, where you might say something that then sparks a different way of looking at the answer to the question, that or maybe there's something that's said that, oh, we hadn't thought about that. If you look at the RIC market, so radio intelligent radio RAN controller, there was nothing there, but in order to try and figure out how to do something to create a forecast, well, somebody said, well, why haven't you looked at SMS and the growth of SMS? I mean, it's kind of the same thing. Well, then suddenly you realize, I've been going about this backwards. I've been trying to find information on something that doesn't exist when I should have been trying to find information on something that did exist that I could then draw a parallel to create some sort of, beginning of a forecast, so that we can look at, how is this going to trend? How is this going to change? And I think that's where AI is really going to come into play in the future, is being able to take things that, as you start to ask questions about the unknown, can it help you find those known parameters to come up with, well, ways to start trying to find an answer to the unknown?
Yeah, so let's talk about that. I mean, in 5 years from now, do you think a lot of these questions are going to be easier to answer because the artificial intelligence is going to be better, or where do you see how do you see your job? How do you see those challenges being different 5 years from now?
I honestly don't see my job being that much different, to be really honest. I think the need for what I actually call antiquated skills, which is that ability to doggedly search, to try and find an answer to their problem in a puzzle, is not going to go away. AI will make it faster, for sure, but you're still going to have somebody who can think about a problem in multiple different ways, because an AI can only think about the problem the way you write the question. It's not going to
Right.
be able to take that question and think about it 16 different ways and go, okay, well, let's look at it from this direction now. There's still going to have to be somebody who does that and tells the AI to look at it differently.
Right. Right. So it's that sort of persistence and judgment that you're going to have to continually bring to the table, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. But I know that you've got a new tool, a new colleague, if you will. So,
Yes.
and,
We
and
have we have an
I'm
intern now. We we,
an
we call her
intern.
Erica.
Tell me more about that.
So Erica is an AI-driven research assistant. We refer to her as an intern basically because she's still learning. She's good at answering qualitative questions, like most AI. The problem is quantitative. There's not really an LLM out on the market that I've found. If somebody knows of it, I'd love to know, that can handle numbers and great big spreadsheets and things like that you and I spend our days living in.
Exactly.
So until there's an LLM that can do that, analysts aren't going to go away because they can handle the numbers. But no, Eric has been great for answering, some of the more simple, I hate to say more simple, but it's more simple questions. What are the
Yeah.
AI use cases in telecom? She can produce a really nice report to start that answer, but then somebody, once they've looked at that, can delve deeper into, okay, well, what are the front end and the back end use cases? Can you break that down for me? So in that aspect, it's great. The thing that makes Erica different from other things out in the world, AI wise, is she only looks at the resources we tell her to look at. So she only has about 13 providers that she can read. And we went through a lot of work with those providers to get clearance and permission and the ability in our contracts to use